it's been firmly established, and for those that are regular viewers, we've talked about this with many medical experts, that there's a firm mind-body connection. To make a long story short, your stress levels go up, your cortisol levels go up, that can break down your immune system, lead to all kinds of health problems. And Kathy's talking about some of the physical discomforts. This is something we were talking about before the show, Lisa, that you've known people that have suffered the torment from being bullied in the workplace, and it did translate into sometimes very debilitating physical ailments.
Exactly. I was actually talking to an elementary teacher yesterday.
Wow.
She had been an elementary teacher for 22 years, and she had been bullied right out of her job. And she is currently suffering with ovarian cancer. And she asked me if I thought that the cancer was related to the bullying. And I said to her, our bodies have a way of responding to the negativity in many ways, and that I would not be surprised if the stress associated with the bullying was connected in some way. Now, I don't have the medical evidence, but I know that when you are being bullied in the workplace, it does affect you not only physically but mentally. I know of individuals who would literally vomit when they got to their workplaces because they couldn't handle the thought of going into the workplace. Even sadder is the fact that I have been talking to individuals who have considered suicide.
That's devastating.
So this is why it's so important to talk about this issue.
It's very important. Something else that Kathy said that I think it's something we all need to mourn for is the fact that people like Kathy at that time lost her entire mission as to what she was even working for. In this case, the children. There's so many jobs out there, and even the teacher that you're talking about, these are young kids in need of attention, in need of dedicated workers. So if you happen to be working at a job that requires sort of a mission as a focus to what you're doing, that could be something valuable lost in the middle of it, in the middle of the toxic environment of workplace bullying.
Exactly. And in my own situation, because the experience became so negative, so toxic, I began to, and I struggled to go to work. You know, I would drive a half an hour and I would just cry, you know, I'd just ask God, just give me the strength to make it through this day. But what kept me going was the fact that there were other individuals in the workplace who were suffering a lot more than I. And I began to turn my focus to those individuals, and so I tried to create a healthier workplace.
Help them.
Yes.
Very positive.
Yes, because it's important for us to remain as positive as we can, and the only way that we can really do that is to make sure that we have a good support system. Our families, our friends, and also professional help is necessary.
There are also some proactive measures that people can take that are being bullied, and that's something we also have to get to. But let's first go to Emily on line 4. Hello, Emily. You're on the line.
Hi.
Hi, Emily. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was going through workplace bullying for a year and a half, and as a result, I was actually fired, wrongfully dismissed. When I asked, am I actually being fired? And he said yes. He could even tell me I was being fired. And I asked him why. He said, well, it's for the best of the 2 other people in this office. It was an office of 8 people. Like I said, a year and a half of bullying. It was a nonprofit organization where I was actually driven, and I'm a work-driven individual who enjoys helping others. So driving to work every day, singing, going on my way to work, it changed into actually I was terrified of going to work. I would actually have heart arrhythmias, which I'm having now as a result of that. Asthma attacks just came on me. I never took a sick day, and then all of a sudden became so ill with asthma.
Emily, how are you doing now? As a result of that experience, how do things resolve for you?
I had to take the lawyer. The lawyer told me, ma'am, you've got every reason that it shows here that they have not given you a reason. From everything that you've told me, you were wrongfully dismissed, and you have, as a result, you have a case here. As a result of that, they didn't even want to, in my record of employment, say that I was, they wanted to put fire without cause, which you don't even get EI.
Emily, did you eventually fight it, or are you in the process now?
Oh, yeah. No, the lawyer fought it for me because he was an expert in wrongful dismissal, so he was able to fight it for me, get me a letter of a reference from the employer as well.
Wow, good.
Making sure that it's positive, not only written, if someone were to call that would...
This ended well for you, Emily?
At the point, I'm still looking for a job.
Yes.
I really don't want to use him as a reference.
Yes.
At the same time, I'm on EI. So the wrongful dismissal, it did help because I was able to actually, the unemployment office was actually able to contact them, even though the agreement was that they put reason for leaving case.
Emily, we're going to have to move along now because of the time issue, but I'm so glad that you called in. Obviously, Emily fought here.
Yes.
And it worked out. And Emily, I want to wish you all the best, and hopefully you'll pick up a job soon. But there's lots to talk about here again, and what people can do, because this is something that you address. For instance, even documenting when you're abused, the times, the events, in case something becomes worse. But I'm also curious on the severity of the abuse, because it can be slow and insidious, but then you get ones like Sam, that was out of character, and it just happened suddenly. But at the same time, it really shakes you up. Welcome back to our discussion about workplace bullying. Dr. Lisa Barrow is with me. You heard about this wrongful dismissal case just before the break, and unfortunately you were telling me during the break that this is happening and it's something that's ongoing. But my biggest concern here is we're living in harsh economic times, so does this put victims and even potential victims more in a very negative position of putting up with the bully in some cases for fear of losing their job and having to be left out in the cold in such an economy?
Yes, definitely. With the economy the way that it is, people are not, well, they haven't been overly open about bullying to begin with. They're not going to want to put themselves in a situation where the bully, especially if the bully is his or her boss, in a situation where the person can be fired or terminated because the organization is downsizing.
Okay.
You know, and so a lot of individuals do end up losing their jobs, and it's couched under, well, downsizing or restructuring, what have you. And so this is why it's important for laws to be passed to protect employees from bullies in the workplace, so that employees know that they have some recourse.
Now, this is leading up to something very important that we're going to be discussing very shortly, and that is, though, if you live in Ontario, because Bill 168, and you pointed this out to me, Lisa, Bill 168 is actually it's being discussed right now, and you're actually giving a presentation about it, or have you done so already?
My plan is to give
a presentation
next week.
It's open to public hearings, so next week.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to be telling you more about this bill shortly, but first, let's go to Romeo on line 5. Hello, Romeo, you're on the line.
Christine, I have noticed over the years that people have been coming up with complicated answers to simple questions, to simple problems.
Okay, go ahead, Romeo.
What you need to do, you approach the manager or the supervisor not as an enemy, but in a friendly way, and to say that, sir, or whoever, I've been uncomfortable with the way that you've been treating me. Maybe just my imagination. But I would like to know what it is so we can, get along better, because I know in my mind, I can feel it, you're really a nice person. And if there's any way I'm offending you, please let me know.
Romeo, I'm glad you called in with that, okay? The polite approach can go a long way, and I have heard it in the past that when you confront the bully in a polite way, sometimes it goes away. But not always, Romeo, and I'll give you a quick story before we go back to Lisa about this. Years and years ago, now we're looking at a lot of years ago, at least maybe 18 years ago, and this happened at Concordia University. My uncle was shot at Concordia. He happened to be in the wrong department, visiting the dean at the time, wrong place at the wrong time. But this man, Fabricant, who's still in jail, he was actually one of the biggest bullies. He was upset as to how he said the university was treating him. So what he did is that he kept on threatening coworkers, he was threatening the dean, and one day he snapped and he just started shooting people like crazy. My uncle wasn't even working in that particular department. He was a civil engineer, another type of an engineer. But this is just a case of how workplace violence and bullying can get. We weren't dealing with a person here who would deal with reason, who would listen to reason. This was a person that was terrorizing that community for a long time, and unfortunately that's sometimes the case, Lisa. This Sam, for example, and I'm not remotely comparing Sam in Lisa's book to Fabricant, but this man snapped and he just held you like a serpent and just wrapped his arm around you and shook you basically because he happened to lose control of himself at that time. There are people with a temper, people who snap, people who get violent and terrorize people. And if you can just give us a couple of comments about that, what do you do about this kind of a bully?
Well, first of all, approaching a person
politely is the way to go, is the number one way to go.
It's the right way to do
yes.
it. You know, you want to talk to the person because maybe there's a misunderstanding. I'm a firm believer you give people the benefit of the doubt. But if you notice that the behavior continues, then obviously you may want to begin to document the situation, talk to human resources,
yes.
talk to the person's boss. But we can't predict how people will respond. And unfortunately, what happens with bullies, if you can approach them in a polite manner, but to them, that's a sign of weakness. And so the very thing that you bring up
wow.
is the very thing that they begin to torture you with, even more so.
And again, what we're highlighting here are the yes. various types of personalities. Not everybody yes. will go to the extreme, like that crazy man at Concordia, or even that we saw, that we do see in many yes. institutions. Not people, most people won't do that, but what you're identifying here is there's some people that you go to them politely, and that's the way to go first. Yes. And there are others that will take that and use that against yes. you. So my next question is, what does a person do when they are a victim of bullying, whether it be sudden violence, whether it be something insidious like what you experienced? What's the step-by-step process, Lisa?
What the person needs to do is first of all, document.
Start writing down.
Write down when, where, who said what.
Who, what, when, where, why, and how.
What color
yes.
pants the person was wearing, whatever. Get all that detail down.
Dates, times, events.
Who was in the room, you know, what were you doing. Try to write down as much information as possible.
Now, what are you doing at this point, Lisa? Are you building a potential case for yourself?
What you're doing is you're building a case for yourself,
okay.
and also it's a way of taking control of the situation, becoming proactive. Targeted individuals, by the time they get to this point, are feeling pretty helpless. So you need to take control of the situation. You need to understand that you are a valuable person and there are things that you can do. So you document. Then you reach out to individuals. You talk to the person. If you are fearful of that individual, then you ask for a colleague or a supervisor, someone to come along with you and have a discussion, because it needs to be discussed. Then you talk to the human resource department. You let them know what's going on. The organization may have policies on, you know, respectful workplace policies.
Lisa, what about the fear factor? Because once again, we are facing harsh economic times, and the first thing that might go through a person's mind is, if I start taking this above my supervisor's head, it's going to have ramifications against me, and I may be in a position of losing my job because they'll start building a case against me.
Right.
How do you confront that fear?
Fear, it's normal. And you will be
so it's a given.
Because you don't want to lose your job, especially if you
But
really
it shouldn't stop you.
It should not stop you. Because my thought is, would you rather be fearful in that situation and allow that situation to push you to the point where you may consider suicide or homicide or become severely ill? Or do you want to be proactive and begin to take control of your life? And if it means leaving the organization, then leave the organization. Yes, the economy is bad and jobs are few and far between, but the main thing is the person's mental health. If you are not well to do the job that you have now, you won't be well in a few months if you continue to allow the
Lisa,
bullying.
what Sam did to you was a bullying act.
Yes.
But it wasn't something that repeated itself over time. It was a bullying act. If you had to go back and do it all over again, would you do anything differently there?
With Sam, and it's important, what happened there was Sam displayed behavior that was violent,
Yes.
a violent tendency.
Yes.
Violence and workplace harassment are two different things. So I talk about Sam to let people know that sometimes there is a situation that comes about that allows the bullying to begin. So Sam represents violence in the workplace. Bullying is the day-to-day repetitive attitudes, behaviors that try to devalue a person. Mm-hmm. So the denials of promotions, the isolation, not being able to interact with coworkers.
But it's still all under bullying.
But it's under bullying. There's
a different category of bullying.
There's two different types.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
All right. So it's important to understand, and this is where sometimes people can't wrap their heads around workplace bullying because they think of schoolyard bullying. But with the workplace bullying, it's more subtle. Mm-hmm. So the person's denied promotions, the person's not given the same opportunities as others. The person may be ridiculed, public performance reviews, things of that nature. And what these things do is they gradually eat away at the person. Mm-hmm. After
completely erodes that person.
Yes.
Now, Bill 168 is very important, and we see it as good news. It's in second reading, or it's past second reading, around that stage that you're saying, and we see it as positive news for Ontario. But am I correct in saying that if this bill does get passed in Ontario, chances are it'll start taking root in other provinces?